Hello and welcome to my Teddy Bear TED Talk. Today we're going to be talking about breathing while singing. I just want to let you know that when I'm presenting things, even if it's in a movie, I start to talk really fast. So if I'm gasping for breath or I need to take a minute or my pace changes, my apologies. I'm going to try to regulate that throughout. So, breathing while singing. Good breathing while we're singing actually starts with our posture. So we're going to start talking with our spine. These are my little note cards. I'm going to try to show them to you whenever I bring something new up. If not, I might go back and show you just so we can have a good order of events. So, the spine, the pillar of posture, right? All right, so posture is a crucial step to good singing. We want to make sure everything's all lined up. So let's talk about how our spine works. So here's our teddy bear friend. What I love about him is he's got these nice lines that can show us the alignment that we're going to be talking about, where things are and everything. So we're going to start with a little disclaimer. This teddy bear has human anatomy. He's very special. All right, so the spine is made up of 24 individual vertebrae, and they're separated into 3 sections. Now we're going to focus on one in particular, but I'll give you the whole scoop so we can understand it completely. So the bottom section of these vertebrae down here, they are called the lumbar spine. For right now, we just need to know that the lumbar spine supports the weight of our upper body, so we want it in the right spot so everything up here that is a little more important to what we're talking about is actually going to be well supported. It's going to be held up so we can do all the breathing we need to do. The middle section right here, this is called the thoracic spine. So this is where our ribs attach. They attach or wrap around and come up to the front, and they're going to protect our rib cage. They are the rib cage. They're going to protect our respiratory system and our heart. And then the top section of our spine up here, this is called our cervical spine, and this is what supports our head and allows it to move like this, like rotate, pivot up and down. Makes him go like this, like this. Okay, and what we need to know for the posture where our spine is concerned is that the spine is actually not ramrod straight. We don't need to be like rigid. It actually has a natural soft S-curve that we want to maintain while we stand. And this should be relaxed. It should feel natural. We don't want to think about, like strapping a broom to our backs. Another thing to think about with the S-curve of our back is we're not like booty popping. We're not like thrusting forward to correct the S-curve. We're just letting it naturally just happen. All right, so let's move on to the next piece. We're going to get a little closer with the anatomy. Let's talk about our thorax. This is our rib cage, like we just talked about, connected to the thoracic spine. So like I said, attached here with the ribs from the thoracic spine, and it's going to wrap all the way around to the front here. And most of these ribs actually connect to the sternum, which is going to be right here. It's also called the breastbone. So what's special about the way that the ribs are going to wrap around and connect is they're not connected with bone, they're connected with cartilage. And why this is so important is because when we breathe, it's going to allow our lungs the space that they need to take in that air. They're flexible. Not all of our ribs connect to the sternum. The bottom 2 actually are free floating at the bottom. They connect to the back, but not to the front. This is something that has to do with structure without constricting everything that needs to move around while we breathe. All right, and we talked about the lungs being housed in the thorax or the rib cage. So, can't really see the yellow. Lungs, there we go. All right, so inside the ribs, we have our lungs, and they do not expand and contract on their own because they're an organ. They're not a muscle. So it's the muscles around the lungs that are actually going to help them carry out the breathing process. Our lungs are kind of, I like to think of them like bagpipes. They have a little sacky shape to them. They're not exactly the same. Our right lung has 3 different sections. Our left lung has 2 to accommodate because our heart's there. We got more junk in there, I know. All right, so our lungs are connected to the muscles that do the work of breathing, expanding and contracting and all that. They're connected to those important muscles through the pleural sac, which is kind of like a little sticky hand, like the kind that you would like throw at your ceiling and they stick. So the pleural sac surrounds the lungs, and adheres to one side. It's like double-sided tape, right? It adheres here, and then the muscle on the other side. So when the muscle is experiencing some action, it's relaxing or it's contracting, it's actually going to pull the membrane and then pull your lungs with it, whichever way it's going. All right, more on the lungs. Let's talk about not so much the musculature, but let's talk about the air actually getting in and out of the lungs, because they don't take on air by themselves, right? How does it get in there? So when we have these muscles that contract to expand our lungs, we'll get a little bit more into those later, but when those expand our lungs, they contract, our lungs get bigger, right? It creates more space in our lungs. Our thorax expands with those muscles, our lungs expand with it because of the pleural sac. So because of that, with the lungs opening up with them, it actually creates a partial vacuum where the air pressure on the inside is reduced compared to the air pressure on the outside. So in order to reach equilibrium, to equalize that air pressure, air rushes into our lungs, so the outside pressure is the same as the inside. Exhalation is just the opposite. When those muscles relax, our lungs start to get a little smaller again, and all of a sudden that air pressure is a lot higher. So the air rushes out so that the pressure is the same once again, and it just keeps on happening, and the equilibrium just has to keep happening in there. All right, so next big thing, let's talk about the muscles that contract for the lungs to expand and take air in. These are called the inspiratory muscles. The main ones that we need to talk about are the diaphragm and the external intercostals. So let's start with the diaphragm. This one is when we can't directly flex. We don't really feel that. It just happens as a result of not as a result, but we don't directly, I can't sit here and flex my diaphragm like I would flex my arm. All right, so the diaphragm bisects the body, and it has a really unique shape. It doesn't sit flat like this. It's a little bit like a frog's head in my mind. It's a little bit domey, and then there's the two spots right here where they might be eyeballs. Some people have said it's like two bowls that are kind of connected, and it's not straight across, it's angled out. This is important because under your diaphragm is all of your guts. Your breathing stuff is up here, your eating stuff is down here, and your diaphragm is in the middle. So what that does is when it contracts, it's actually going to contract from this top, and it's going to squeeze and contract down. The pleural sac is up here, the lungs are here, and it's going to expand down and push your belly out and make room for that air to rush in. And then when it's relaxed, it's going to return to that bullfrog shape or bowl shape, whatever works best in your mind, and return the lungs to their smaller size. Another important thing to know about the diaphragm is, yes, it bisects your entire body, but there's stuff up here, your eaten stuff, that needs to connect your eaten stuff down here. So your esophagus goes through it, as does your arteries to maintain blood flow through the rest of your body. That's not super important to breathing, but it's important to consider. It bisects you, it doesn't cut you in half. All right, the next inspiratory muscle, the external intercostals. So this is where the bear is going to come in really handy. Just hang in there with me. So the external intercostals, I'll angle him this way, are on the very outside of your thorax, on the outside of your rib cage. So these, my fingers are going to act as ribs right now. All right, so they start here, they originate from upper ribs, and they insert into the lower ones. I hope you can see that well. Start here, insert here, and they descend your ribs that way. And instead of going straight down, I'll come in this way. Instead of going straight down, they come in diagonally, so you can get an expansion that doesn't go straight up and down like this, but comes out a little bit. Because when you breathe, you're not shifting your rib cage and your bones are on like that. That cartilage allows the flexibility. Oh, I'm trying to align this in the camera to go out this way, which is why the diagonal is important. So these, unlike the diaphragm, the external intercostals are the muscles that we can actually flex. If you just push your rib cage out, that's your external intercostals flexing. All right. Next up, we talked about our inspiratory muscles. Let's talk about our expiratory muscles. These are the muscles that contract for exhalation. They are the abdominals, which are a muscle group, and the internal intercostals. So we just talked about the other intercostals. Let's talk about the internal ones first. So I got my little finger ribs on our bear again. So these are kind of like the antithesis of your external intercostals. They're going to start on a bottom rib underneath the external intercostals, and they're going to insert into the upper rib. So they're going to climb your rib cage. They also have a diagonal alignment, but they're going to intersect the diagonal alignment of your external intercostals. So instead of both of them going like parallel like this, they're going to go like this. All right, so like the externals, these are highly voluntary muscles. We can directly flex them. This is like when you squeeze your ribs in to make yourself smaller, like if you're playing sardines in hide and seek. Squeeze them in. That's your internal intercostals. Those are gonna push your lungs together, reduce that space, and make your breath go out. Second one, let's talk about those abdominal muscles. So these muscles come in 4 layers. I'm gonna hold up our bear friend again. There, that's a good spot for him. So I'm gonna be gesturing down here. Our lungs are up here, right? Diaphragm up in the top part of him. His belly is down here. Those abdominals are on the outside of our belly where all of our eaten stuff is. Keeps it all in there, keeps it all together. So I'm gonna work from bottom to top for our abdominal muscles. The bottom layer that is the closest to all of our eaten stuff is the transverse abdominals. So if they're down here, transverse means that they're gonna go straight across this way. The second layer is called the rectus abdominis. These are the abs people try to get like a 6-pack when they're doing lots of crunches and stuff at the gym. These ones run upwards and they exist in sections called bellies. Those are like the different packs we see when they are ripped. And these ones, within each little belly, like if this was the belly of the abs, they'd actually run vertically because you're pulling yourself up and squishing together this way, right? When you're crunching. All right. Third layer is the internal oblique abdominals. These ones sit on top of your rectus and they are diagonally angled downward. All right, and then on top of those are the external obliques. Similar words, right? And they are aligned diagonally upwards. So all of these abdominals connect around your spine and up your ribs to keep everything in place, right? This does not go, however, for the rectus abs. Those are attached to the other abdominals around it. For singing, the transverse and obliques are the most important when we think about contraction and relaxation, because that expansion of your breath is going to end up being more out and like upward with your ribs, and then downward when you're exhaling, right? So those are the ones we're going to be the most concerned with. All right, and then with both of these in mind, let's talk about muscle antagonism. So this refers to the way in which expiratory and inspiratory muscles work in opposite directions to accomplish the same purpose, which is breathing, right? An example of this is as our lungs are expanding, we're taking air in. Down here, your diaphragm is contracting, pushing down. Your tummy has to make room for all of your guts, all your eaten stuff, right? So your abs are relaxing while your diaphragm is contracting. And then the opposite, right? Okay, so that's like the anatomy of breathing. Now we're going to talk about ways to breathe in general. So 4 main ways. The first of which we're going to talk about is called clavicular breathing. And of course our clavicles are, okay, up here, right? This is hard to do in a mirror. They're up here, right? These little things, mine really stick out. I would show you, but I wore a t-shirt. So this involves a lot of your exterior intercostals, and a lot of the expansion is going to be up on the top of your chest rather than down further in the bottom. So what this means is when you see somebody breathe like this, here, I'll do it as an example for you. Oh, I should have worn a different shirt suit. like a V-neck, but here we are. So when clavicular breathing occurs, you're gonna see an expansion up here, my shoulders raised a little bit, and I guess you can kind of see my clavicles pushing out against my t-shirt, but that's what it looks like. This isn't a very controlled way to breathe, because once you expand, all of the muscles that are more involved in your exhalation aren't up here, right? They're more down here, like we talked about. So it's not going to be a very controlled way to let your breath out or to sing. It might be useful if you're in like a period drama, because if you're a woman in a period drama, chances are you're real constricted down here by your corset, so you only got to go up. All right, moving on. The second method of breathing is called thoracic breathing. So this relies almost entirely on your external intercostals. This expansion that goes out this way, right? So this actually is really good for your super controlled exhalation, where you keep that space while you're going out and you're still keeping that space and you're really working on that muscle antagonism. Super good for long phrases, but it doesn't really utilize your diaphragm. Same goes for the clavicular breathing. You're placing a lot of stress on those intercostal muscles. The opposite of this, or on the other end of the spectrum, is belly breathing. So this relies way, way, way on your diaphragm and not so much on your intercostals. And it really requires your abs to really push out against your jeans or whatever you're wearing to accommodate the breath that you're taking. So it's more like vertically thinking, breathing out this way instead of breathing out that way. Something important to keep in mind is people have different tendencies, different instincts when it comes to breathing. Something that we've been reading about is that women or slightly smaller people might think about breath a little more vertically and push out on their bellies because that's what they see. And that's what I feel myself doing a lot. Like if I breathe in a mirror, I can see something going out more than I do out like vertically, more than I do see out laterally. And then the opposite goes for sometimes men or larger folks, is if you can see that expansion outward this way easier, you might rely more on those muscles. So let's talk about our ideal way of breathing to sing. So this is called appoggio, or balanced breathing. This is ideal because it really balances belly breathing and thoracic breathing. It involves all of the inspiratory and expiratory muscles, and it kind of evens the burden for all of them, and it really maximizes how you use them to make your breathing more efficient. So like we talked about, maximizes muscle antagonism, maximizes your control, and the efficiency. An important thing to keep in mind is that different genres, different styles, and just different voice parts might affect the way that you breathe. Somebody who's singing classical opera is going to breathe differently than somebody who is singing, I don't know, death metal. Death metal, jazz, it's all very different. But no matter what style you're singing, there's definitely a way to breathe that is the healthiest and efficient. All right, we're almost to the end, I promise. So there are stages of breathing for singing that are different from the stages of breathing. Just sit in here, chat. So these are 4 different steps. The first one is inhalation. This is our expansion. We're preparing to sing, and we're just taking in all the air for the support that we need. This involves taking in the air quickly, deeply, good posture, and we want to use that appoggio breathing, especially when we're classical singers. If we're going to maximize this, we can use our mouth and nose together, and personally, I think that takes a lot of practice, because otherwise, I just feel like it takes a lot of work. Like if I try to do it, I really gotta think about it. Does a great screen cap. It's gonna be adorable. All right, a good key to figure out if you're doing this correctly is if your if your breath in is fairly quiet, if it seems effortless. And another good trick is to use your nose to breathe in where the music allows. All right, after this step comes suspension. This is the part that's really important to singing and makes it unique from breathing otherwise. This is where you're holding right before you start singing after your inhalation, and you are preparing your breath support to put sound through your instrument. This is just a really quick minute, but you're taking your breath in, and you have just a quick second of like, okay, my support is there, and I know how I'm going to use it, and then you're going to sing. Step 3 is our controlled exhalation. This is actually our like the singing part of singing. Controlled exhalation, we're blowing air as we sing, we're just putting sound to it. So this is where we want to make sure our breath is conserved and slowly released, which is what we talked about with controlling the expansion, keeping it there. That's a big part of keeping our breath support like optimal for the entirety of what we're singing. The very last piece of this is called the recovery. It happens at the end of this breathing cycle where all of the respiratory muscles should relax. It's really quick, but they should relax. This is when that in the controlled exhalation, in the expansion that you've been maintaining, give yourself a second of rest and then you're back at it again. So that is the cycle, and you repeat it as you sing. And sometimes you'll need to modify with like a catch breath or whatever. But that is the process. That's the anatomy. Those are the ways to breathe and all that good stuff. I hope that the Teddy Bear TED Talk was helpful. And yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, my Teddy Talk. Bye.